Among the most memorable gifts I ever got for Christmas was when I was 7 years old. I was very surprised one day when to our home came two wonderful Christmas gifts to me. They came from the owner of the company that delivered coal to my parents' home. I had been in a hospital after a serious injury, and this fellow had heard about it and he wanted to cheer me up. So these gifts were given. One was a big toy truck, a metal truck, big semi, and the other was a child's record player with several records. And so that Christmas time, I played over and over again these records. And the two that I remember most are, first of all, Burl Ives singing My Bonnie Lies Over the Ocean. Now, the problem was that I thought it was My Bunny Lies Over the Ocean. And I puzzled as a child, how could your bunny get over the ocean and be missed so much? I pondered this actually for many years, but I liked the song, so I kept playing it over and over. My bunny lies over the ocean. It was a while before I found out that it was Bonnie, and it meant a loved one rather than an animal. Just this last week, I looked up that song, and it wasn't about a loved one. It was a Scottish ballad expressing the hope that Bonnie Prince Charlie would come back and assume his throne in Scotland after it had been banished to France by the English. But the other song that I remember so fondly was Gene Autry singing Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. And I suppose I don't have to rehearse the words for you, but just in case you don't remember, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer had a very shiny nose. And if you ever saw it, you would even say it glows. All of the other reindeer used to laugh and call him names. They never let poor Rudolph join in any reindeer games. And then one foggy Christmas Eve, Santa came to say, Rudolph, with your nose so bright, won't you guide my sleigh tonight? Then how the reindeer loved him as they shouted out with glee, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, you'll go down in history. And for many years, I wondered, what was the story behind this song? How did this come to be written? And so I've done a little research over the years and found that it was written in 1939 by Robert May. He was a 35-year-old copy editor for Montgomery Ward's in Chicago. And he was given the assignment in 1939 to come up with a children's story to be given to customers at the coming Christmas. And so he started thinking about this and working on this. And he wanted to have a story about animals. And he was very taken when he was a kid about the story of the ugly duckling, because it was his story personally. He was small, he was thin, he was shy, and he was ridiculed and bullied by other kids. And so he thought that his 4-year-old daughter, Barbara, was so intrigued and delighted by the deer at the zoo in Chicago at Lincoln Park that he thought he would make it of deer. And then one day he looked out from his window in his office as the fog rolled in, a heavy fog off Lake Michigan. And he said to himself, it would be very difficult for Santa to bring his sleigh through the skies in that type of fog. And thus was born in his mind Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. And slowly the story took shape. And now his boss was upset with him at first because a red nose was associated with alcohol consumption. They said, you can't have a red nose on this deer. But he prevailed upon them and they finally relented. And so he wrote the story and illustrations. And along the way, he asked the help of his 4-year-old daughter, Barbara, who had some suggestions which were incorporated into the story. Now, it was a difficult time for Robert and his daughter, Barbara, because Robert's wife and, of course, Barbara's mother had been suffering from cancer for 2 years, and she died in July. So the family was in mourning during the time when he was trying to wrap up this project. And he was in a funk, he said, in his own life because he was heavily in debt, he said, and he was still grinding out catalog copy instead of writing the great American novel as he had hoped. He said, rather than that, I was describing men's white shirts. So he was in a funk. But in August, he presented his finished story to his daughter and his in-laws, and he could tell that they liked it and that it did what he wanted it to do. And the story was a great success. And it was kept as a gift for children going to Santa at Montgomery Wards for the next 7 years. They gave away several millions of this popular story. And then in 1947, Montgomery Ward generously gave the rights to the story to Robert May. He got a publisher to publish it, and it became an instant success, a bestseller. And then his brother-in-law, Johnny Marks, wrote a musical rendition of the story and tried to sell it to a number of famous musicians. Bing Crosby turned it down, Diana Shore turned it down, several others turned it down. So he approached Gene Autry, and he was leery at first, but he played the dummy copy to his wife at home, and she said, Gene, you've got to take on that song. That'll do very well. And it did. He recorded it, and it became a bestseller in 1949 at Christmas time and was well established when I first heard it in 1951. And you realize that by the time of his death in 1975, at age 71, he had received royalties on more than 100 Rudolph the Red-Nosed products. The popularity of the song continued and continued even after his death, so that by 1985, it had sold 150 million copies and 8 million copies of sheet music. Now, what accounts for this great popularity? At one point, it was only behind White Christmas as an American favorite at Christmas time. And what is the reason behind this popularity? And for my loving it when I was a kid and still loving it today, well, I think it's because it touches something very deep down in our humanness. The fact that every individual has something to offer, even though they feel different or they actually are different from others. It's a story of acceptance, self-acceptance, and acceptance by others. You know, when I was in college, I worked at Moody Press, a religious publishing house in Chicago. I was a part-time worker, but I was there 1 year for the Christmas party, the staff Christmas party. And it was great because at noon, people, left their desks to go down to have this party together with a wonderful meal and then entertainment and then singing together the songs of Christmas. And, in the Christmas spirit, after being at this wonderful party, I returned to my office. And here was a fellow who was sitting working, and he hadn't gone to the party. And I said to him, why didn't you go to the Christmas party? And he said, I went last year, and they profaned Christmas by singing Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. I'm never going to go to that party again. Well, I was somewhat taken back about that, to say the least. And as I see it, it's not a profanation, but it embodies the message that we all have a light of goodwill within us to share with the world, as did Rudolph, and as did Santa when he encouraged Rudolph to share his gift. And of course, this was taught by Jesus in many of his parables, that there is inherent worth and dignity in all people, the first principle of our Unitarian Universalist faith. So I believe it symbolizes this light within us that we can share throughout the year. And of course, this is the meaning of the candle lighting ceremony, which we will be sharing now as we light our candles and sing Silent Night. So may it be, and Merry Christmas to you all.